Hey there, welcome back. But hang on a second before you scroll past. What you're about to hear, it's not just some business success story. It's way more personal than that. It's a story about life. It's about a kid who grew up surrounded by struggle. He watched his dad suffer through jobs that never respected him. He lived in tiny, rundown apartments, and most days, he felt like no one even noticed he was there. And somehow, that same kid went on to build one of the most beloved brands on the planet. Not just another coffee shop, but something that completely changed the way people start their mornings. And no, he wasn't born into money. He didn't have a family full of powerful connections. He didn't even start the company he would one day help turn into a global icon. In fact, most people laughed at him, rejected him, told him flat out that no one would ever pay $3 for a cup of coffee. He didn't hear no once or twice. He heard it 217 times. But he kept going anyway. His name? Howard Schultz. And this is the story of how he turned a tough, painful childhood into a billion-dollar brand. How he didn't just sell coffee, he created a culture. And how every rejection he faced became the fuel that kept him moving forward. And while you're listening, just know, you're also building your English. We keep it clear, emotional, and beginner-friendly so you can learn real words, real lessons, and get fluent through real stories. So go ahead, grab your coffee, or grab that dream you've been sitting on. Because this story, it's not just something you'll remember. It just might be the one that changes everything for you. Part 1. The Boy Who Grew Up in the Shadows. Brooklyn, New York, 1953. I was born into a world where dreams didn't stretch very far because life didn't give you the space to dream big. I grew up in the Bayview housing projects, one of those government-run buildings tucked into a tough corner of Brooklyn. It was the kind of place where folks lived week to week, just trying to stay afloat. My dad, he was a delivery driver. Nothing glamorous. No steady paycheck. No health benefits. No safety net. One winter, he slipped on a patch of ice and hurt his hip bad. And you know what came of it? Nothing. No help. No workers' comp. No doctor stepping in. Just silence. I watched it all happen. Watched this proud man, my father, turn into someone I barely recognized. Jobless, crushed, ashamed. He'd just sit there on the couch, staring off, like the life had been sucked out of him. And there was no one, absolutely no one, reaching out a hand. That moment stuck with me, burned itself into my memory. Years later, I'd say, that's when it changed. That's when I understood what it meant to be treated like a number, not a person. And I made myself a promise. If I ever get the chance to build something, it's going to be different. My company will never make people feel invisible. I was still just a kid, but that kind of pain doesn't fade. It sinks in. We were so broke, I used to feel embarrassed to even invite friends over. No bedroom of my own. No comfort. Some days, not even enough clothes to go around. I once said, when you grow up that poor, it never leaves you. Poverty sticks to you like a shadow. But that shadow, it didn't drag me down. It lit something inside me. I didn't have a blueprint for success. But I had one thing that couldn't be taken from me: grit. I threw myself into sports. Took whatever odd jobs I could find. I sold newspapers on street corners. I saved every dollar I could scrape together. And somehow, against all odds, I became the first in my family to get into college. It was an Ivy League. I didn't walk into Harvard or Yale. I ended up at Northern Michigan University on a football scholarship. I still had to hustle, worked nights as a bartender, and days as a salesman, just to keep going. After graduation, I landed a job at Xerox, which, back then, was known for having some of the best sales training in the business. I did well, better than most. But deep down, I knew I was meant for more. Eventually, I took a job at a small kitchenware company. Nothing fancy. My role? Sell coffee machines to local cafes and restaurants. And one day, something caught my eye. While going through sales reports, I saw that one tiny client up in Seattle kept ordering more machines than anyone else. I couldn't figure out why, so I hopped on a plane to see for myself. The place was called Starbucks. Just 4 stores at the time. And believe it or not, they didn't even sell coffee by the cup, just beans, grinders, and equipment. But the moment I walked in, I felt it. Something different. The vibe, the people, the soul of the place. I couldn't explain it, but it felt special. There was something magical about Starbucks. I remember saying, it wasn't just about coffee, it was about community, about warmth, about something real. And right then, a seed was planted. I couldn't let it go. So, I left my job behind. And I joined Starbucks. But what I didn't realize back then was that saying yes to Starbucks would soon lead me straight into the biggest fight of my life. See, I'd been through struggle. I knew what it felt like to be invisible. I'd lived with shame, with no money, and no real hope. But I still carried this dream inside me, one I held close ever since I watched my father break. I wanted to build something better, something that didn't just pay people, but honored them. And when I found Starbucks, I thought I had found the place to make that dream real. What I didn't expect was that the very people I admired most would end up rejecting the heart of my vision. They told me, "That's not what we're about." Just like that. But here's the thing. I wasn't just trying to sell coffee. I was trying to build something deeper, something that felt like home. At the time, I was just another guy working for the company. I didn't own it. I wasn't wealthy. I was simply one employee at a small coffee outfit in Seattle. But inside me, there was this idea, one no one else could quite see yet. Then in 1983, Starbucks sent me on a business trip to Milan, Italy. Just a quick stop for a trade show. But the moment I set foot in that city, everything changed. As I walked through the streets, I noticed something I'd never seen before. Espresso bars everywhere, full of life. People chatting, laughing, connecting, not just drinking coffee, but truly being together. The baristas knew customers by name. Strangers became regulars. Coffee wasn't just a drink. It was a ritual. I stood there in awe, feeling like I'd stumbled into another world entirely. This is it, I thought. This is what America doesn't have. Not just the product, but the soul, the culture, the warmth, the belonging. It wasn't about the espresso. It was about the human experience, the connection. When I got back to Seattle, I rushed into the office, lit up with energy. I told the founders, "We have to do this. Let's open coffee bars, real ones. Let's create a space where people come not just to grab beans, but to stay, to talk, to feel something." I was buzzing with belief. I thought they'd see it too. But instead, they looked at me, paused, and said, "No." That moment broke something in me. They told me, "That's not who we are. We sell beans, equipment. We don't serve drinks." They didn't think Americans would ever spend $2 or $3 on a cup of coffee. Said it was too risky, too foreign, too weird. I sat there stunned. Everything I had imagined, gone, in a single breath. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. But deep down, I knew, if they won't do it, I have to. So I made the hardest decision of my life. I left. Not because I wanted to. I loved Starbucks. But my dream had grown bigger than my loyalty. In 1985, I walked away to build something of my own. I called it Il Giornale, after an Italian newspaper I liked. It was my tribute to everything I'd seen in Milan. But I had a huge problem. No money. I needed investors. I believed in what I was building. I thought they would too. But reality hit fast. One rejection after another. Meeting after meeting. Door after door slammed shut. You're dreaming too big. No one's paying $3 for coffee. You're not even Italian. I heard it all. Mocked. Dismissed. Flat out ignored. I've never forgotten the number. 217. That's how many times I was told no. 217 rejections. That number is etched into my brain forever. But I didn't give up. I couldn't. I kept knocking, kept pitching, kept pushing, until finally, 30 investors said yes. I raised $400,000. And in 1986, I opened my very first coffee bar in Seattle. It was more than just a store. It was my vision brought to life. The music was Italian. The baristas remembered your name. You didn't just walk in for caffeine. You came in for the feeling. And people loved it. They didn't mind that it was new, or that it cost more. They felt seen, welcomed, human. Il Giornale took off. And just when things were going right, something I never saw coming happened. The founders of Starbucks, the same ones who had once said no, decided to sell the company. Starbucks, they said, had outlived their vision. They were ready to move on. I couldn't believe it. The dream they had once denied me was now on the table, for sale. But there was one huge problem. The asking price. $8 million. In today's money, that's over $10 million. And I didn't have it. I was still just a small player with one store. Still scrappy. Still building. But this was personal. This was everything. So, one more time, I went to battle. Talked to anyone who would listen. Pitched. Pleaded. Cried. I told them, this isn't just coffee. This is my purpose. This is my life. And after weeks of nonstop effort, I did it. I raised the money. In August of 1987, I was 34 years old when I signed the deal and bought Starbucks for $3. 8 million. But I didn't just buy a company that day. I bought back my dream. Part 2. The coffee that became a culture. It was 1987. I had just bought Starbucks, but let me tell you, it wasn't the Starbucks you know today. What did I actually walk away with? Not a global powerhouse. Not a profitable business. Not even a real cafe. All I had was 6 small stores, 1 modest roasting plant, a handful of employees, and a brand that didn't quite know what it wanted to be. Starbucks, back then, didn't serve coffee to drink. No lattes. No cappuccinos. No frappuccinos. No playlists. No soft chairs. None of that even existed yet. It was just beans, machines, and brewing gear. But I didn't buy it for what it was. I bought it for what it could become. I didn't just want to run Starbucks. I wanted to completely reimagine it. I had a vision that coffee wasn't just a drink. It was an experience, a ritual, a feeling. I wanted to create something that lived between work and home, a third place, a space where people could slow down, feel seen, and just be. So I got to work, and I anchored everything on 3 big principles. First, build real human connection. Every customer should feel noticed, respected, appreciated, like they truly matter. Second, design stores with emotion. I didn't want them to feel like businesses. I wanted them to feel like living rooms. Warm lighting, soft music, the rich smell of fresh coffee hanging in the air. And third, make every cup feel personal. The baristas had to smile, learn names, look people in the eye, make you feel like you belonged, even if it was just for 5 minutes before work. See, I wasn't chasing fast coffee. I was chasing something deeper. I was chasing moments. So, I obsessed over the details that other places ignored. The scent inside the store had to be coffee. Always coffee. Nothing was allowed to overpower it. Not food, not chemicals, nothing. The music? Hand-picked playlists to match the mood. Not just noise, something that wrapped you up, made you want to stay a little longer. The furniture? Cozy, inviting. No hard plastic seats. No cold, sharp lines. I wanted people to settle in and connect. Even the counters were designed so baristas could talk to you face to face, not from behind some wall. And the lighting? Always soft, always gentle, never harsh or fluorescent. And of course, the names on the cups. That simple touch wasn't just about efficiency. It was about making people feel seen. Because for me, the person behind the counter wasn't just pouring coffee. They were creating connection. They were making someone's day feel just a little bit better. I believed in our people, deeply. I didn't see them as employees. I called them partners. Because that's what they were, partners in the mission. Even our part-time baristas got health benefits. Stock options. Real training, not just on how to pull a shot of espresso, but on how to make someone feel like they matter. That was rare in America, especially in the service world. But I stood by one simple belief. If we take care of our people, they'll take care of our customers. And if we do that, everything else will fall into place. We trained our baristas to smile, to greet regulars by name, to ask about someone's day, not because it was in a script, but because it meant something. When you walked into Starbucks, you weren't just a transaction. You were a person, a story, a name. Back in 1987, Starbucks had 6 stores and hardly any brand recognition. No national footprint. Big dreams, small budget. But we started building, store by store, city by city. By 1992, we had 165 stores across cities like Chicago, Vancouver, and New York. But that growth wasn't just about numbers. It was intentional. Every location was chosen with care. Every store was crafted to build a sense of community. I refused to franchise. Everyone told me I was crazy. But I needed to protect the experience. I needed to make sure that same warmth, that same care, existed in every single store. I said, you can't outsource feeling. You can't outsource soul. Before we came along, most Americans had no clue what a latte even was. Words like macchiato, cappuccino, frappuccino, they were foreign. But we introduced them gently, patiently. We taught our team. We taught our customers. And slowly, the language of coffee changed. People stopped just saying, I'll have a coffee. They started saying things like, can I get a tall vanilla latte with soy milk? We didn't just sell beverages. We reshaped a daily habit into something meaningful. Starbucks became a place where people learned new words, shared quiet moments, and found a little bit of themselves in their routine. And yeah, I love coffee. But more than that, I loved what coffee could do. When we bought Starbucks in 1987, let's be honest, it wasn't much. No global brand, no profits, not even a real cafe. Just 6 little stores tucked away in the corners of Seattle, a roasting plant that barely held itself together, a confused identity, and a few dozen employees selling coffee beans, espresso machines, and mugs. No drinks, no lattes, no music, no magic. We weren't buying a business. We were buying the possibility of a dream. But we didn't just want to own Starbucks. We wanted to reinvent what coffee could mean in America. This wasn't going to be about selling cups. It was going to be about building a feeling, a place people would come to not just for caffeine, but for comfort. A third place. Not home, not work. Something in between. So we rolled up our sleeves and got to work. Everything mattered, every single detail. First, human connection. We believed people should feel seen, valued, and welcomed the moment they walked in. Second, emotional design. We created stores that felt like living rooms, warm lighting, curated music, that distinct coffee aroma. And third, personalization. No two customers would feel the same, because every interaction was meant to feel like it was made just for you. We didn't want to sell fast coffee. We wanted to build ritual, community, something sacred and slow, something soulful. Inspired by Italy's cafe culture, we trained ourselves to care about things most people ignored. The smell inside the store, always coffee first, never food. The music, curated by feel, not just genre. Seating, cozy, never cramped. Counters, shaped so you could talk to your barista without feeling rushed. Even the light was intentional, soft, never harsh. And of course, the names. We asked for your name not just to write it on a cup, but to remind you that here, you weren't just a transaction. You were a story. But none of it would have worked without the people behind the counter. We didn't call them workers. We called them partners. And we meant it. Whether part-time or full-time, our baristas got healthcare, stock options, and soul-level training. Not just how to make coffee, but how to make people feel something. We believed, deeply, that if we took care of our partners, they would take care of our customers. In 1987, we had 6 stores. But in 5 years, we were at 165, from Seattle to Chicago, Vancouver to New York. But we didn't grow fast just to grow. We picked every location with intention. Every store was meant to create community, not just convenience. And we refused to franchise, not because we didn't want the money, but because we wanted to protect the soul. We can't outsource emotion, we said. We have to own it. Most Americans had never heard words like latte, macchiato, or cappuccino. But slowly, we taught them, and they taught us, too. It became a language of its own. Can I get a tall vanilla latte with soy milk? That wasn't just an order. That was a ritual. Then came a happy accident. One of our store managers blended some ice, milk, and coffee, added a little sweetness, and called it the Frappuccino. It wasn't in our plan. It wasn't in our handbook. But when Howard tasted it, he smiled and said, "This is brilliant. We're launching it nationwide." By 1995, the Frappuccino was a cultural phenomenon, especially among younger customers. Over $50 million in sales in the first year. Sometimes the best things come from the margins, not the boardroom. With America falling in love with our stores, we set our sights beyond the ocean. Our first stop? Tokyo. Japan wasn't a random choice. We admired their respect for ritual, precision, and aesthetic, and their growing curiosity about Western culture. It was the perfect mix of modern and traditional. In 1996, we opened our first international store. Lines out the door. People came not just for the drinks, but for the idea. Starbucks became a fashion statement in Tokyo, and it proved one thing. The feeling we were building in Seattle could travel. From there, the map lit up. The UK, China, Singapore, South Korea, UAE, Germany, and dozens more. By the end of the 90s, Starbucks wasn't just a brand. It was a movement in over 20 countries. But with growth came pressure. By 1997, we had 1,400 stores. By 1999, over 2,500. Annual revenue crossed $1 billion. Howard's net worth passed $100 million. But success isn't always a straight line up. When you grow that fast, things slip. Some stores still felt like home. Others felt cold, robotic. The soul started to stretch thin. Long lines. Loud spaces. Every store started to look the same. The charm of uniqueness replaced by corporate sameness. Howard felt it. I didn't want to build McDonald's, he said. I wanted to build something that meant something. But Wall Street had arrived. Shareholders wanted more. Faster growth. Higher returns. More stores. More systems. Less soul. And so in 2000, exhausted and conflicted, Howard stepped down as CEO. I've taken the company as far as I can, he said. Now it's time for someone else to take it higher. He remained chairman, watching from the side as new leaders, first Orrin Smith, then Jim Donald, pushed the company further. At first, it worked. More stores. More profits. Stock price rising. But something else was rising too, disconnection. Howard started walking into stores and felt like a stranger. They were busy, clean, profitable, but the heart was fading. I didn't recognize them, he said. And then the world collapsed. The financial crisis hit in 2007. People were losing jobs. Families were cutting back. For dollar coffee suddenly looked like a luxury. Critics asked, why are we paying this much? The backlash came fast. Stores closed. Jobs were lost. Stock price plummeted from $40 to $8. Starbucks lost over $6 billion in value. And Howard, he watched it all. Heartbroken. Silent. This wasn't what we built. The warmth was gone. The purpose, fading. But that wasn't the end. It was just the pause before the comeback. It was 2008, and Starbucks was in serious trouble. The global economy was crumbling, and the world was slipping into a financial crisis. People were losing jobs left and right. Families were tightening their belts. And suddenly that $4 coffee wasn't a small treat anymore. It felt like a luxury nobody could afford. Sales plummeted. Fewer customers came through the doors, and the once bustling stores grew quiet. Starbucks, which had stood as a symbol of modern culture, now seemed overpriced, overhyped, and overexpanded. The numbers told a harsh story. Within a year, the stock price nosedived from $40 all the way down to less than $8. The company lost over $6 billion in value. Stores began shutting down by the hundreds. Thousands of employees lost their jobs. Morale sank deep, and the magic that once made Starbucks special seemed to vanish. Behind the scenes, Howard Schultz watched it all unfold, his heart breaking. Though he'd stepped down as CEO back in 2000, he remained chairman, observing from the sidelines with a sharp pain in his chest. Visiting stores, he saw dirty floors, baristas who seemed distracted, empty seats, and customers who looked rushed and invisible. He whispered to himself, "This is not what I built." The very things he had poured his soul into, connection, experience, emotion, were slipping away fast. Then, in January 2008, the board of directors came to him with a plea. "Howard, we need you back." At 54 years old, Howard Schultz returned as CEO, not to lead a celebration, but to fight for a dying dream. He knew this would be the hardest battle of his life. The world was in crisis, the media doubted him, the company was crumbling, and worst of all, the culture that made Starbucks special was broken. But Howard didn't shy away. He stepped in with fire in his eyes and told his team, "We're not in the coffee business serving people. We're in the people business serving coffee." And we've forgotten that. Howard wasted no time. He made bold, radical moves. First, he shut down 900 stores, not because they weren't profitable, but because they no longer reflected the soul of Starbucks. Next, he made the painful decision to lay off thousands of employees, knowing that if they didn't act fast, the whole company might not survive. New store openings were paused so they could focus on quality instead of just growth. Howard even cut his own salary down to $1 a year to send a clear message. This wasn't about him. It was about saving all of them. And then came one of his most powerful moves. He shut down every single Starbucks store in the U.S. for a whole day. 7,000 stores closed. Millions in lost sales. But to Howard, it was worth it. Every barista went through espresso retraining because this wasn't just about technique. It was about bringing back pride. He focused on restoring what made Starbucks special. Better espresso machines to nail consistency and flavor, ditching microwave sandwiches that ruin the coffee aroma, encouraging baristas to make eye contact, start conversations, personalize each experience, and redesigning stores to feel like the warm, welcoming third place they once were. Howard also embraced new ideas like free Wi-Fi, mobile ordering, and launching the Starbucks Rewards app, which would become one of the most popular loyalty programs worldwide. But Starbucks wasn't just about coffee anymore. Howard pushed the company to become a force for good, investing in fair trade coffee, supporting small farmers in Latin America and Africa, committing to ethical sourcing, paying farmers fairly, reducing waste, boosting recycling, and promoting diversity and inclusion by hiring more veterans, minorities, and refugees. As Howard said, success is empty if you're not lifting others with you. Starbucks was becoming more than just a coffee brand again. It stood for something bigger. By 2010, the turnaround was undeniable. Starbucks rose from the ashes with revenue climbing back to $11.7 billion, net income soaring to $946 million, stock prices recovering to over $30, customer visits increasing, employee satisfaction rising, and brand trust fully restored. From Wall Street to Main Street, people said the same thing. Howard Schultz saved Starbucks. But beyond the numbers, something even more important returned. The real aroma of coffee, the soft music playing in stores, the warm smiles from baristas, and the energy of connection filling the air. The Starbucks experience was alive again. One day, Howard walked into a store in Brooklyn, not far from where he grew up, and saw a young barista hand a cup to an old man with a smile. "This one's on me today, sir," she said. "You always brighten our day." Howard smiled back and thought, that's what it's all about. In 2017, Starbucks stood tall, fully recovered, stronger than ever, and woven deeply into the fabric of daily life around the world. With over 25,000 stores across more than 70 countries, a market value soaring past $80 billion, and more than 300,000 employees, Starbucks had become one of the most recognized brands on the planet. Its iconic green and white logo was a symbol seen everywhere, and the Starbucks app had become one of the most popular mobile payment platforms in the U.S., even outpacing Apple Pay in some areas. But beyond the impressive numbers, Starbucks had transformed into a global habit, a daily ritual shared by students and CEOs alike, from Tokyo to Toronto, Mumbai to Miami. People walked in, ordered their drink aloud, and felt truly heard, seen, and valued. Howard Schultz, now in his early 60s, often wandered into stores quietly and without fanfare. Sometimes he'd watch a single mother typing away on her laptop while sipping a latte, or see a homeless man receiving a warm coffee from a smiling barista. He'd hear the gentle hum of laughter, music, and calm, and think, this is exactly what I dreamed of, not just a product, but a place, a feeling. He never wanted to build the biggest coffee company in the world. He wanted to build the most human one. And he did. Looking back at the scale of his achievement, it was staggering. In 1987, Starbucks had 6 stores, just a handful of employees, and was a local business. By 2017, it had grown to over 25,000 stores, 300,000 employees, revenue over $22 billion a year, and a stock price that soared from $17 at IPO to more than $60 a share. All of this came from a man who grew up in public housing, who watched his father struggle and suffer, and who promised himself he'd never let workers feel invisible again. That year, Howard stepped down as CEO once more, this time on his own terms. "It's time for a new generation to lead," he said, "but I'm not leaving. I'm just passing the torch." He handed the reins to Kevin Johnson, a longtime board member and tech executive, while Howard stayed on as chairman, deeply involved and passionate, but no longer managing daily operations. Howard didn't retire quietly. Instead, he poured his energy into social impact, championing human rights, veteran employment, and underserved communities. He launched programs to hire over 10,000 military veterans, partnered with colleges to offer free education for Starbucks employees, provided jobs to refugees and disadvantaged youth, and advocated tirelessly for racial and economic equity. For Howard, business was never just about profits. "We are not in business to make money alone. We are in business to elevate humanity." Most people don't know that Howard's deep care for employees and the company culture stemmed from personal pain. His father, Fred Schultz, was a delivery truck driver who, after an injury from slipping on ice, was fired without compensation or support. Howard was just 7 years old. He never forgot how his father sat at home, broken in body and spirit. "I saw what happens when workers are invisible," Howard said. Starbucks became his answer to that pain. A company where even part-time baristas received healthcare, stock options, education, and dignity. In 2019, Howard even explored running for president of the United States. Why? Because he believed true leadership means service, not power. He wanted to bring the same human-first philosophy he championed at Starbucks into the political arena. Though he eventually stepped back from the race, his message was clear. "I was a poor kid from the projects. I built something that touched the world. So why not use that experience to heal even bigger things?" Today, Howard Schultz is retired from Starbucks, but the culture he built lives on. Every smiling barista, every warm cup of coffee, every customer who finds peace in the moment, every employee called a partner instead of a worker, these are his legacy. He turned coffee into connection, a simple commodity into a vibrant community, and proved to the world that you can build a billion-dollar company without losing your soul.